Morning class. We're going to be making chocolate chip oatmeal cookies today. And I know what you're thinking. I don't like oatmeal in my chocolate chip cookies, but I promise you this is my grandma's recipe and these are one of the best cookies you will ever eat. It's very, very important that cookies are measured correctly and nice and accurately. It's important to the success. Cookies tend to spread on the pan, and if you measure ingredients incorrectly, they either spread too much or not enough. They also will leaven just a little bit, and so that's important to know when you are spacing them on the pan. We're going to begin by accounting for perfect measurements in our recipe. The recipe you've been given in class is a full recipe, but what you are going to make tomorrow is a half recipe. Hopefully your substitute has asked you to cut the amounts in half, and you've done so prior to watching this film. What I'd like for you to do is to check your measurements as I go through mine, and I have the ingredients here in the order of use. So we are starting with 1/2 a cup of shortening, 1/4 of a cup plus 2 extra tablespoons of granulated white sugar, 1/4 of a cup of firmly packed brown sugar, 1/2 a teaspoon of salt, 1/2 a teaspoon of baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla, 1/2 teaspoon of hot water, 1 egg. We have 3/4 of a cup of flour, lightly measured, and we have 1 cup of oatmeal. The chocolate chips are not a formula influencing ingredient. Their accurately cut in half measure would in fact be 1/4 of a cup plus 2 extra tablespoons, but we're going to round it up to 1/2 cup of the chocolate chips. And let's begin. We've got a medium-sized mixing bowl, and the cookies that you're making are going to use the creaming method of mixing. So we're going to begin by creaming together our shortening that's been firmly packed into the 1/2 cup measuring cup using our rubber scraper. And with that, we're going to mix our 1/4 of a cup plus 2 extra tablespoons of granulated white sugar. Use your rubber spatula and mix this together until it's very, very smooth. And this takes a minute or two. Cookies are a formula recipe, and that's one reason why the measurements need to be really accurate. That's another reason that most of your cookie recipes are going to kind of follow the same set of guidelines. They're going to use usually a solid fat, they're going to have a quantity of sugar, and those two things get mixed together prior to anything else. Then you're going to mix in your egg, which is going to bind together all of your ingredients in the end. And then your dry ingredients at the very end. All right. Next, we're going to put in our 1/4 of a cup of firmly packed brown sugar. And you know you've done a good job packing when the brown sugar keeps the shape of the measuring cup once you've released it. We're going to mix this together, still with the rubber spatula. And pay attention to the steps of how these are mixed together. If you try to put other ingredients in the bowl and mix them in different order, then the cookies are not going to turn out as good as you would hoped. Okay? They really have to be combined in this exact set of steps. Okay? Once our brown sugar has been completely combined with the granulated white sugar and our shortening, then we're going to add our 1 egg. And at this point, we're still going to use our rubber spatula, but after the egg, we're going to switch to a wooden spoon. And we're going to mix this really, really thoroughly. And what we want to do is whip a little bit of air into it also. It improves the texture of the cookies so that they're nice and chewy if you can whip a little bit of air. Alright, and I'm going to scrape down my rubber spatula because I'm going to switch to my wooden spoon after the addition of the egg. Alright, I'm going to put in my baking soda and my salt. And with cookies, normally you're going to mix after each ingredient is added. my vanilla in my hot water. And then next it's time to add the flour. It would be best if you added your flour in increments, about half at a time. And you kind of have to go slow on this. The dough becomes very, very stiff, but there are still quite a few ingredients still left to mix in. So you're just going to have to be patient. And it's mostly mixed, so I'm going to add the remaining portion of my flour. And what I like to do, because the dough becomes so stiff after you add the oats, is that I prefer to incorporate the chocolate chips before I put in the oats. They're easier to get distributed evenly in the dough that you've made prior to adding those oats. I'm going to mix this, scraping the bottom of the bowl each and every time to make sure that your dough is really consistent throughout. Then we're going to go ahead and add in our oats, 1 full cup. And mix. I have my oven preheated to 375 degrees, and I have out my aluminum baking tray, the baking tray that we most often use. You do not need to grease the pan when you're making these cookies. They have a lot of fat in them and they don't stick at all. Okay. This dough, I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but it should make about 2 dozen cookies. Remember that bake time is influenced by quantity. So the larger cookie that you have, the longer it's going to take in the oven. And if you make the cookies larger in size than I recommend, then the 8 to 10 minutes or 10 to 12 minutes of bake time is going to be substantially different. Once you've satisfied that it's completely mixed, we're going to take our ungreased tray and we're going to drop them by spoonfuls. These are called drop cookies, literally meaning you drop them by spoonfuls onto the pan for baking. You should have about a tablespoon for each cookie. Okay? We're going to drop them evenly spaced, at least 2 inches apart, fitting just 1 dozen on each pan. So that means we're going to use rows of 3 and create 4 rows. All right, so just 12 cookies at a time on a pan because of how much they spread. I'll get these panned and show it to you, and then we'll talk about how long you're going to bake and the process for removing them and baking your next set of cookies. Just a couple more to go. Might be a little big. It's important to have them all the same size so that they bake at all the same time. And you're not pulling out your tray with some that are overbaked and some that are underbaked because the size is not consistent. So we have used about half of our batter. We've created just 12 cookies. Your first time you're putting a pan in the oven, the pan is cold. And so we're going to cook this pan for approximately 10 to 11 minutes at 375. When you remove the pan from the oven, please set it on your stovetop. Allow it to sit for an additional 3 more minutes. That 3 more minutes on the hot pan cooks your cookies more gently and allows them to finish baking without over browning. Cookies, when removed from the oven, really should look slightly underbaked. The edges may be just barely browned, but the top should look slightly underbaked. Allowing them to sit on the pan finishes their cooking very gently, and then you can remove them. You're going to use a spatula, remove them one at a time onto some paper towel that's placed on your countertop. The pan then needs to be scraped of the crumbs that remain. You use the back of your spatula to scrape the pan, put the crumbs on a paper towel or in the trash can, and then you can proceed with putting the rest of your cookies on your pan. Please don't use two different pans. It's best to use the same one again and again, providing that you've scraped off the extra crumbs that have remained. If you fail to scrape off the extra crumbs, usually this next batch of cookies will stick. So you should end up with between 20 and 24 cookies if you've made them the correct size. Please try my grandma's cookies. I know you'll love them. Bon appetit.